In that, we discussed the three main routes that civil engineers usually go to, and that's generally consulting, construction, or working for a government entity. We also spoke about early career experiences and different paths you can follow to further your career. So if you haven't already watched that, you can head over to our YouTube channel and watch it there. The aim of this roadshow is to really broaden your horizon in terms of potential job opportunities out there. So with that, we have 7 great speakers today. Up first, we will have Michael, who will just give us a brief history and introduction of Saice. And for those who don't know Michael, he's a qualified civil and structural engineer. And most importantly, he's the chairman of the Saice Young Members Panel. I don't think there's anyone out there more qualified to chat to us about Saice, actually. Following that, we have Nkululeko Tusini, who will give us a short presentation on career paths, but most importantly, also about networking. Following that, we have Kristen Moodley, who will just give us some insights in what it takes to be a management consultant with a civil engineering degree. We also have Gracia and Caitlin, who will discuss their career paths. Following this, we have Paco and Professor Richard Walls, who represent the Saice Water and Saice Fire divisions. They will provide us with some background on their divisions and the type of work they are involved in. We also have some time at the end of the program for any questions you may wish to ask our presenters. So please make use of the chat box if you have any questions. Our speakers are also free to answer directly in the chat box or can answer verbally towards the end of the evening. I think so. Let's just get started. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Jermaine. Are you going to share my presentation?
Yes, I can share it with you.
Yes. While Jermaine is loading the presentation, it's correct. My name is Michael Mhlang. I'm the current chairperson of Saice Young Members Panel, that is now formally known as Saice Future Leaders Panel. So I currently hold a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in civil engineering at the University of Johannesburg. And I'm appointed as the South African representative of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations Young Engineers Future Leaders Forum, also known as WIFIO YE/FL committee member. I'm also an executive board member of the South African Institution of Civil Engineering, which is Saice, and I have previously served as the branch chairman of the Saice Johannesburg branch and also the vice chair. I've worked for both public and private sector as an engineer with experience in schools infrastructure, design and construction, and I'm currently working as a facilities manager, upgrading and maintaining infrastructure for the city of Johannesburg. I'm currently the Graduate Engineer of the Year, confirmed at last year's Sunrise Saice National Awards in 2021, which awards recognizes individuals who have demonstrated leadership in an outstanding manner, establishing a reputation for professional service, and are registered as candidate professionals with at least a minimum of 3 years post qualification experience and under the age of 30. So I'm still very young, and I am where you are, students, not so long ago. So today's presentation, Jermaine, if you can go to the next slide, I would like to touch on just some major points. So how I structured the presentation, I'll give you a quick introduction and what is Saice, touch on what we are doing as Saice Future Leaders, inspire you a little bit with activities that we've been working on since last year and the year before when the lockdown started, and then I'll conclude, save a little bit of time so that at least you don't get exhausted. I know it's after lectures and you want to rest, so I'll give the opportunity for other speakers. All right. So Saice is an abbreviation for the South African Institution of Civil Engineering. It was established in 1903 and it's been around for 119 years. I think we are the oldest voluntary association in South Africa. We boast a membership of 14,000 plus. I say plus because we are always growing, which is a mixture of engineers, technologists, technicians, and out of that 14,000 plus, 40% are classified as your millennials under 36, above 18, which is the YMP, formerly known, now future leaders. This is the domain in which we are operating. We have 19 branches in Saice and 11 divisions. We have 15 student chapters from accredited universities in South Africa. So each and every one of you are attending because your university is either affiliated to Saice and there's a student chapter that is vibrant on campus that you can also join and be part of so that you're clued up with what's happening within the industry post-graduating. Saice is a recognized voluntary association by the Engineering Council. This means that once you've qualified and you want to register as a candidate, engineering technologist, or technician, you then get one CPD point and a discount in your annual membership fee because of your affiliation with Saice. There's also access to all benefits within the organization, including a network of engineers. As a student member, you are also allowed to apply for the bursary that is known as SPEBS, that's offered exclusively to members. So you have to be a student member before. For you to be a student member, it's free of charge, and you then enjoy all the benefits. And once you qualify, then you can then upgrade your membership to an associate member or a graduate member, whichever that you choose in that time of post-graduating. So we recently launched a platform called Saice Connect. So this platform was as a result of the need for networking, mentorship, and job opportunities, and being connected to potential employers once you qualified or for in-serve training. So I want to encourage everyone to register on this platform. It's fairly new, so I think it's in its pilot phase. So I'm quite excited about it because it's something that the executive board saw fit as a value addition to your membership, where we start connecting you with senior engineers already in the industry so that at least there's that seamless transition from being a student to becoming a professional. And then point number 11, which is the Saice Young Members Panel, is mentioned. We officially applied for the name to be changed to Saice Future Leaders Panel so that we align with international organizations such as WIFIO, which stands for World Federation of Engineering Organization, and FAO, which is Federation of African Engineering Organizations. It will become apparent later when I do the presentation why we had to do this. So this is the current committee where I put myself as number one because I think I'm the keeper in this committee if we are talking in the football language. And then the vice chair being Tsepo Koena is based in Cape Town, and Erin Da Silva, who is currently working for Hatch, is based in Johannesburg. Shilpi Jain is based in Australia, so this was a strategic move to have young South Africans that have migrated abroad sitting on this committee so that we expand our network and reach to benefit our younger members. We have Priscilla, who's based in Bloemfontein, Closey in Johannesburg, Jermaine, who's the organizer of this roadshow, based in KZN. And thanks to technology, we are able to connect remotely. And Kabelo, who's now based in Ireland. And then number 9, I think that's the striker in football terms. I reserved it for you, the students. I want one of you one day to sit on this committee and be an active member of this organization. And of course, we have number 10, which is the national office staff, which I call them the behind the scenes, the support structure, our mentors that sit on this committee to help us. So in this slide, I decided to share some of our past successes and events from last year so that you have an idea of what we do as Saice Future Leaders, formerly known as Saice Young Members Panel. So we interact definitely with senior members of the industry. We organize the Women in Hard Hats in collaboration with the Johannesburg branch, with the opportunity to meet a member of the Executive Council, the MEC of Department of Infrastructure, Tasneem Motara, and the past president of Saice, Vishal Krishendot. And we organized this event with a live band that was playing from Cape Town. So that was quite innovative and young. So we try and put all these young elements in all our events as young engineers and innovators. So these are some of the opportunities that you get if you're an active member. And I emphasize the word active member because you have to be active within the organization for you to derive maximum benefits and value. On the slide on the right of my screen, we did a webinar with Sencha, who is the champion for diversity and inclusivity. And all these webinars, you can find them online and you can catch up and you see what we are doing. We also organized a quiz night in collaboration with CISA YPF, which was a fun online event, and we're testing each other on institutional knowledge and some engineering knowledge. So it turned out very well. So our involvement with the World Federation of Engineering Organization, Saice Young Members Panel has a seat there as the South African representative. We organized the webinar internationally where we link with other young engineers from Australia, North America, China, the rest of African continent. And these are good events where we benchmark ourselves with other engineers and we create a global network that can benefit our members, especially student members that will come on board one day once qualified, and then you are able to tap into some of these networks and this memorandum of understanding that Saice signs with international partners such as WIFIO. So this was one we did in ethics and engineering, which was quite insightful. So I would encourage you to go on YouTube and watch what was discussed. It's very important in the times that we live in that as engineers we conduct ourselves ethically. Sticking to our international ambition and our affiliations internationally, this year Saice Young Members Panel managed to attend the World Engineering Summit that was hosted by Costa Rica. And in these images on your extreme left, I'm here with the delegation from Costa Rica and the executive directors that are in charge of WIFIO and planning. And in the image in your bottom right on the table, I'm seated with the president of Federation of African Engineers Organization and Engineering Council delegates, and some other African members from Liberia that we were networking with. And in the far right, in the bottom corner, that was a picture that we took with the current president of EXA, Refilwe, and the council member TC. So these are networks that we now have at our disposal. So we are now able to engage with our own governments and engineering councils and table some of the issues that we are facing as young engineers while we are studying and post graduation in our efforts to register professionally. So we are young, and us being young, we also recognize the needs to have social networking events. So this year, because of the lockdown restrictions being relaxed, we decided we want to kickstart our socials that we couldn't do last year. So we started with Gauteng Social, which was a success. We had students also in attendance from the University of Johannesburg, FEDS, and it was a great success. So I encourage students to also socialize with other engineers and expand your network. And in the bottom, we had one just recently on last week, Friday, in Cape Town, where the current president of Saice, Prof. Marianne, made a feature and everyone was excited, took a picture with her in the bottom left corner. And in the bottom right corner, we had our team building last year as Saice young members with the CEO of Saice and the national office staff. So we do have fun, and though we are engineers, we are not just all work, but there's a little bit of play there, so there has to be a balance. So before I conclude and give others an opportunity, I want to leave you with some encouraging words as students. I know that you are going through a time where you are trying to get qualified, and engineering is difficult. It's difficult for a reason, or else everyone would do it. So I'll leave you with a quote from Dr. Michael Ekwimalo. He's a doctor that I follow on LinkedIn. So he says, you're a problem solver and not a title holder. Succeeding as an engineer goes beyond the title. Your ability to identify and solve problems is what makes you an engineer. You'll have more fulfilling career if you build it around problem solving. What you get out of the industry is also tied to your problem solving abilities, and your longevity is relative to how you approach problems. Strive to be a strive to be a go-to problem solver. Gradually progress to solving bigger problems. That's where the money lies. Be open to collaborations. You can't solve every problem alone. Update your knowledge from time to time. The industry is a dynamic one. Avoid complacency and stay hungry. So with that, I'd like to thank you and also thank the panelists today and enjoy. Thanks, Jermaine.
Thanks, Michael. That was great, actually. I think that's going to follow on from Nkululeko quite well, because Nkululeko is an avid poster on LinkedIn, and I thoroughly enjoy his posts about graduates and also about engineering. So I'll actually share his LinkedIn profile on the group chat for you guys to go and follow him there. But as Michael said, join Saice. It's free for students. I've added the link onto the chat box. So like I said, there's nothing losing here. So over to you, Nkululeko. Sorry, Nkululeko, can you hear us? I think he might be having some technical difficulty here. He is in our chat. Can I ask that we move on over to Creason?
I think there's an issue with audio.
Creason, we can hear you loud and clear. Would you be in a position to present now?
I think no problem. Happy to.
Okay, your slides are up onto the screen.
Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. Just want to give myself a brief introduction. My name is Creason, and I'm a qualified civil engineer working in the field of business management consulting. So just to kick off, I just want to give a brief discussion on brief career in engineering. So straight after graduating, I worked for a consulting firm in the water engineering division in Pietermaritzburg in KZN. I worked on a variety of projects in the mining, rural water supply, and industrial industries. Some of my experience included reticulation design, water supply for mining projects, pipeline layouts and specifications, pump station design, tender document preparations, and a lot of AutoCAD drafting. As you can fathom, it was quite a very technical role, technical and analytical role, and very much structured and aligned to what I had studied in my undergraduate career. So I very much did enjoy my career in engineering, but I felt something was missing. There was a gap. There was a gap that needed to be filled, and hence I started to explore different areas of work, being an engineer. So just going on to my reasons for choosing management consulting. I was always interested in the corporate world from a young age, actually. And during my high school career, I enjoyed accounting, economics, and anything to do with businesses. What really was the catalyst that ignited my interest in management consulting specifically was that I came across a YouTube feed on videos having to do with management consulting case studies, and that got me really interested. What I really liked was the wide variety of industries and types of projects one could work in, being in the management consulting field. So I decided to try pursue a career in consulting by investigating the landscape in the business consulting landscape in South Africa. I did a lot of research on different companies and what it takes for what skills and what attributes that companies were looking for in individuals. And what I found was that a lot of the job offers for consultants, none of them, very few of them actually mentioned that you need a commerce academic background. So I decided to further explore and further outlining actually reasons why I decided to further explore and pursue this career was that I felt career opportunities in engineering were limited and that the growth in the corporate world was far much more accelerated. So I applied to a number of firms and had a few interviews, felt that they were really engaging, but at times very challenging because a lot of the skills I had weren't aligned to the operations of those firms. But nevertheless, I persevered and continued my job hunt in consulting, and eventually I found an interesting role at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a leading advisory, actually professional services firm in the world. I applied, went through a rigorous interview process as well as going through multiple case studies, and was fortunate enough to be successful in that. Looking back, I really did enjoy my time in engineering, mainly because I practiced exactly what I had studied in my undergraduate career. But I felt in the end, corporate is what suited my interests and my particular skill set more. So going onto the slide that's been presented, what is management consulting? I'm sure a lot of the engineers on this call must be, and students must be really confused. I mean, how can an engineer with a analytical mindset and huge technical background, how could they ever fit into consulting? Well, to address that, I'm going to go through this slide and explain briefly what is consulting. So basically, management consultants help companies solve their problems, maximize growth, and improve their operations and business performance. Normally, we are hired by senior decision makers such as senior executives, CEOs, and COOs for advice on a number of things,
Oh,
depending
sorry.
on what.
I'll just. Oh, sorry about that. I
Sorry?
just wanted to test my audio. Sorry, no, it's Nkululeko. My audio is working now. Sorry about that.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So normally hired by senior decision makers for advice on a number of things, depending on what type of advice your firm is offering as a company. And usually this advice will be structured according to the research, engagements with clients, best practices, and much more. So as you can hear, as you can understand, it's a wide variety of skills that's needed and types of work that you do. Just going on, I'd like to just quickly discuss what I do as a management consultant. So I've been working for PwC for just over 2 years now, and the division that I work in is in deals, which specifically deals with mergers and acquisitions, which is the buying and selling of businesses. What the division which I specifically work in is called subdivision is called deal strategy. And what we do for our clients is we investigate the market and industry which they operate in, assess business plans and companies' internal forecasts, and try and align them to the direction which markets are moving in, and then give our insights and comments on that. Our analyses usually give clients who are usually investors insights into whether they should invest in a particular business who's operating in a particular type of industry. So that's a brief overview what I do as a management consultant. I've worked on a number of projects in a wide variety of industries. Some of them include retail, banking, financial services, including insurance, manufacturing, packaging, even mining. And each engagement, I must say, no engagement is the same. There's always different things that you need to investigate, and every single day is a new learning curve. Just going on to what skills myself as an engineer that I've leveraged in management consulting. I feel engineers have really high analytical skills and pay great attention to detail. So I've leveraged that, and it's been of significant use for me. Out the box thinking and not just focusing on the financial numbers is what differentiates an engineer from an accountant, who tend to generally just look at the internal operations of a business and don't really pay attention to the external market. Other skills I've leveraged were project management skills and report writing, which really helped me communicate in the business world. The next thing I'd like to talk about is skills an engineer would need to build to be a management consultant. Definitely one would be to develop basic business skills like understanding how general businesses operate, how they operate, how to read financial statements, and the meaning of basic macroeconomic indicators like GDP, inflation, socio-demographics, and unemployment rate. Having that high-level understanding from a macroeconomic view will enable engineers working in the consulting field to have a better, more understanding of how those would affect businesses, and from there draw insights for clients. Being able to communicate is essential because we frequently engage directly with clients and have many meetings, many discussions, and go through a lot of presentations. So your communication skills are essential. And also, I mean, having said that, you need to develop your business lingo and have a solid frame of confidence. If any of you guys are interested in pursuing a career in management consulting, what I would advise is firstly watch a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of content out there. Definitely just to give you the basic. Once you perhaps, if you're interested in those videos and it's got your brain thinking, I would advise perhaps doing an online short course. And eventually, once you eventually get into the field, or something that I would advise to sort of differentiate you amongst other engineers would be to perhaps pursue an academic qualification. An example would be Examples would be SEMA, CFA, and an MBA. The next slide I'd like to talk through is the main management consulting firms globally. A lot of them are structured differently, with a pure focus on strategy, business strategy. Those are mainly your boutique consulting firms, and these are the biggest consulting firms in the world, and the most prestigious in my view. Those include BCG, McKinsey and Company, and Bain and Company. Those firms have a very strong reputation in industry, but offer huge career growth prospects and very lucrative compensation leaders. But it's very difficult to get into, and also the working hours are really high. Other firms include advisory firms slash professional services firms, which have an array of service offerings. Those include PwC, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and KPMG. Those are your big four accounting firms. They have management consulting services offered in their advisory divisions. Accenture is a very tech-focused firm with a lot focus on tech consulting. So these I would say are the main consulting firms. A.T. Kearney, Oliver Wyman, and LEK are huge globally, but don't have such a huge presence in South Africa. Going on to my last slide is just briefly talking to the general career path for a management consultant. Generally, you join in early years. You join as a business analyst or an associate. You'd usually spend 1 to 2 years in that role, generally doing the hard-hitting work and a lot of research and internal analysis in your first 2 years. Then once you're done with that, you usually get promoted to a senior associate or a senior associate consultant. There you start to have a bit more management oversight and project management over different projects. That usually it will take you in your third to fourth year, you'd be in that role. Then from the 4th to 5th year, you usually are promoted to a consultant or an associate. As you can see, the different firms have different designations for these roles, but the tasks and role you play within them are largely similar. So the more senior you get, the more management and oversight you'll have. Once you go on to engagement manager and project leader, then you have more business. Your role changes to be more business development and oversight over more junior staff. So you then have the responsibility to bring in clients and business growth. And then once in perhaps from your 8th to 10th to even 12th year, you generally you'd be a director or a partner, which is which is the main career goal for most consultants, where you have large oversight over a big team, and you drive business growth, maintaining client relationships and building more client relationships. As your career progresses through consulting, your hours generally do exceed normal working hours. So as a consultant, I generally work more than 40 hours a week. Those at the boutique firms, Bain, McKinsey, and BCG, they tend to work, 60 hours plus. I've heard of some people even 80, and this is on a consistent basis. So you tend to burn out quite quickly, but the compensation packages and the business experience, professional experience is immense. Plus, if you even spend 1 or 2 years at these boutique firms, it gives you just having that name on your CV opens a lot of lucrative opportunities within other firms in the corporate industry. So, just in closing, I just want you guys to not to restrict yourself to engineering. Not that I'm advocating for consulting, but being an engineer, your skill set is so diverse. You can work in almost any industry because that engineering background, analytical mindset is so flexible. You would definitely be an asset for any firm. Cool. That's me.
Thanks, Creason. That was great. I think what's most important we getting from Creason's presentation is that your skills as a civil engineer are most definitely transferable to different careers. And I think that's the theme that we're trying to focus on today. And as we see with our later presenters, it'll keep on coming up. So thanks, Creason, for that.
Sure.
Nkululeko has sorted out his presentation and his audio. So let's just jump over to him. As I said, Nkululeko is an avid poster on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to drop his LinkedIn link, I guess, on our chat here. Nkululeko, if you are there, you're free to start presenting and sharing your slides.
Okay, perfect. I trust that you can hear me now.
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Perfect. All right, so I've loaded the slides. So I think I'm supposed to do this. Let's see. Are you guys seeing the front page? It's a bit of a, oh, okay, there we go. I'm supposed to, okay. All right, sure, guys. Thanks for this. It's a different system that you're using, so I still had some teethering problems trying to sort out all these things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move my big screen. As engineers, we always have that big screen for designing and what have you, so that I can push this camera up, and then with this camera up, then I'm hoping that I will start having a better angle. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so it's a good thing that this session is actually a webinar sort of session, because I am having a bit of a flu. So, so yeah. So excuse me if I cough as we proceed. All right. So I'm just gonna grab this and put it back here. All right, guys, so today I was tasked with basically presenting a session on like career paths and networking. Given the time, so I look at the times like only 15 minutes. So I was like, okay, I need to compress everything into a 15-minute presentation. And based on my timing, I couldn't pull off like a 15-minute presentation to cover both career paths and networking. So I'm hoping that I will sort of touch on the networking as I proceed with the presentation. Right, so right, so the system just works a little bit different from what I'm used to. Is there a way of muting? Okay, all right, I guess we'll just carry on. All right, so yeah, so my name is Nkululeko Tusini. I am a mechanical engineer by profession. I've got a master's in engineering management from UJ, as well as a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Also from UJ, I'm a professionally registered engineer with EXA. I'm a certified energy manager, a project management professional, and I've been working since 2010. So I've got a little over almost 12 years experience, so just over 11 years experience working in the engineering industry. So I've been if you look at my career sort of progression, I started off as a design engineer, then moved into maintenance and operation, where I was fulfilling the role of a GMR 2.1. So I'm not going to go into the details what GMR 2.7 is. But in short, it's what you call in the general machinery regulations. There's certain appointments that you need to make in factories and in mines. So yeah, so I was just the engineer who's appointed to ensure that the maintenance and operation are operating the facility in accordance with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, as well as the complying to codes and standards. Now, fast forward, moved into consulting. I did a lot of roles in consulting. So one of the roles being construction manager. So as the civil guys, structural guys, you might know or interact with construction managers, because a lot of your work is governed by the construction regulation, and according to the construction regulation, you need to appoint a construction manager in terms of construction regulation 8.1. So I have been legally appointed as a construction manager, even though the project itself was a mechanical installation, but in a construction context. So yeah, so then fast forward, got promoted to be a project manager for the same site. Now the construction manager reporting to me and the entire team. Then fast forward, became the lead mechanical engineer or divisional manager for mechanical engineering, and then started my own business where I'm the chief executive officer for Palucraft. Now, what I do, apart from running Palucraft, so Palucraft is a accredited skills development provider, focusing on engineers, technicians, and artisans in mining, manufacturing, and in construction. So what I do is, if you follow me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, you'll see that I share a lot of strategies and tools that help engineers increase their skills and to be more impactful at their workplaces and stand out in their careers. So the way I do that is I share a lot of experience that I had as a graduate engineer, my lessons learned, and some of the insights from other senior engineers on like how they navigated this whole engineering career. And I think today's presentation that I'm going to share with you is some of the things that I sometimes share quite a lot. Actually, I share it quite a lot on Twitter and on Facebook. And on LinkedIn. I'm not very big on Facebook. But let's not get into that. So please, guys, if you are on your computers, which is there's no way that you are not on your computer or your cell phone, please go on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, you can search Nkululeko Tusini. There's my URL over there. And on Twitter, you can also search Nkululeko Tusini, and then you will find me. So let's connect on LinkedIn and let's connect on Twitter. So on LinkedIn, they say I'm a micro influencer. So so join the discussions that I normally have with all the other engineers. So so at first I was a bit hesitant because I normally present a lot to mechanical and electrical engineers, technicians, and artisans from Saice Ymp and mostly from the Saice Ymp side of things. So it was a bit of a daunting task to come and speak to civil engineers. I've worked a lot with civil engineers during my consulting days, so I have sort of an idea of this whole what it takes to be a successful civil engineer in this engineering industry. Now, to be honest, I think so a lot of the presenters today are going to give you the different options to say, okay, you are a civil engineer, and these are your options. You can go consulting, you can go to the public sector. You can become a roads, you can specialize in roads, specialize in structures, sewer, bulk water, whatever the case may be. But in my point of view, I don't think like the problem that a lot of graduates are facing is a problem of saying, okay, what are the different paths? I think the biggest problem that a lot of graduates face is, which path should I take, right? So that's like one of the things that I always try to push and to try to give guidelines on. Okay, so how do you decide on which path to take, right? So to answer that question, then I think the because we are all engineers, we think in frameworks and structures and all of that. So I summarized like a 6-step framework to say, okay, if you are wherever you are and you're confused on which path to take, then just follow my six-step framework, and you will reduce the anxiety, and you will possibly identify a career path that you would like, and actually stick with that career path over a long term. So my career path framework consists of 6 main steps. So first step is, well, deciding on a career path. So now, to decide on a career path, I think the other colleagues who will be presenting today will give you the options to say, these are the career paths that you can take. You know, you can, like the previous speaker is talking about a career in management consulting, and then there will be other speakers talking about data analysis and all these different career paths. So the big thing, I guess, is to know which paths, which I think is the easy part. And then once you know with which path you want to take, then the next step is finding or identifying a role model who's sort of doing what you want to achieve or want to attain in that career path that you have chosen. And then once you've identified a role model, you know, so I'm going to make an example in the upcoming slides of Mr. X. All right, so Mr. X, you identify Mr. X as your role model, and then wherever he is, then you start looking at what sort of skills does Mr. X have that sort of brought him or resulted in him being where he is. All right, so I think that's where the previous speaker, you know, was talking about the skills that you require to be like a management consultant or an executive, a manager, or a senior engineer, whatever the case may be. So it's always easy. So once you have that role model, you can identify what skills they have to get to where they are, and that in today's time, it's actually brilliant because we've got tools like LinkedIn, where you can literally go and look at someone's LinkedIn profile, which is pretty much their CV. You can reach out to the person on LinkedIn and, you know, and just find out, so what sort of skills did you gain for you to be wherever you are? And then some of the skills that you need to gain are pretty simple. Like, for example, if the requirement is to have to professionally registered with EXA, then you can just go to the EXA website and say, EXA, what skills do I need to have for you to register me as a professional engineer? And then that's the skills that you need. So some of the things will make sense in the next in the upcoming slides, why I am phrasing it the way I'm phrasing it. Then once you have identified the skills, then you identify the gap. So you do a gap analysis. So you are where you are. So I'm taking that, my understanding is that a lot of the people today are students. So if you're a student, so your gap analysis is pretty simple. So your next step is you are going to be an intern or a junior engineer. So, but for you to get there, you must just finish your qualification. So that's an example of a gap analysis. So an action plan, then from there, then you will have your action plan for the different steps. And an action plan is, for example, just pass your all your modules, then get an average of 60%. So how do you do that? You study every single day, you forget about the nice life, and yeah, you to avoid alcohol, bad friends, have the right mindset, and you will get it done. Right, so that should be your action plan, and then the last step is just execute. That's it. Like there's no secret formula. So once you know that, okay, I'm gonna write these tests and this is the scope for the exam, you just study and then you go write the test. Execution. So there's really nothing fancy that separates you from all the other successful people out there, and your role models for that matter. So it's just yeah, so the system just shares the presentation in a very funny way, but yeah, so I guess I'll have to do with what we are working with. So defining your career path. I'm not going to spend a lot on step one because I think a lot of our presenters today will cover this. So as a civil engineer, you pretty much have three options. Obviously, each option will sort of break down into more options. So at the high level, it's either you're going to public sector, right, or you're going to be a contractor or become a consultant. So under the, let's call it sector banner, you can sort of add also like the private sector, where is the like asset owners. So if for instance you think of a company like Sasol, when they're building a new facility, they will need like civil engineers, structural engineers. So yeah, so perhaps in the first let's call it a segment, we can say public sector and asset owners. All right, so that's where you can sort of be. And then the contractors who actually execute or who do the work, so if you have a road to be constructed, they do the actual work, and then you've got the consultants who do the design work and the site supervisions. All right, so yeah, so as I said, I'm not going to go into like the details. I'm expecting that the other presenters will unpack the requirements and how the different what you call sectors work and operate. Right, so in all the sectors, you then have four other options. So you can go technical, you can go project management, you can go construction management, and you can go generic management. So I call it generic management. Think of it as, for instance, the management consultant example, becoming a technical leader or a divisional manager or a chief executive officer within one of these three spaces, right? So that's the generic management, because at generic level, you're no longer doing a lot of technical work per se. You are more focused on the bigger picture, and and also like managing like the resources, making sure that your senior managers are doing what they are supposed to do, right? So fast forward, now you've identified your path, right? So your path, in this case, let's make an example. I don't know if I can point here. Okay, all right, so no problem. So you see where it's written step one, where I've got the step one that I just presented. Now, the practical way that we can do it is, now when you identify a role model, is to say, well, what do you want? Do you want to be in a public contract? Do you want to be a contractor, or do you want to be a consultant? So the example that I'm going to make here is with Mr. X. So Mr. X is a civil engineer that I've worked with before. All right, so Mr. X obviously chose the consulting route from graduation, and he chose to specialize in roads. So he's a civil engineering graduate, and then yeah, so and then at the height of his career right now, Mr. X owns his own what to call structural civil engineering company, but from a career point of view. So I'm not going to talk about the entrepreneurial side of things. I'm just going to keep it to career, right? So he, at the peak of his career, he was a technical director, managing over 300 million rands in what you call in what do they call it in civil? Do you guys call it capex or infrastructure spend? And he had a team of over 70 people, which was a combination of engineers, senior engineers, managers, safety people, and so forth, right? But let's look at Mr. X's progression as before he became this technical director. So basically what I'm saying to you is, you could be sitting right now and say, I want to go into consulting, and I look up to Mr. X, who's a technical director at ABCD Consulting Engineers. All right. Now you say, okay, that's what I want. But now let me look at how Mr. X progressed in his career. So again, a good place to start, LinkedIn. Then next best place to start is speaking to Mr. X, and then he sort of goes through the different steps, right? So before Mr. X was a technical director, he was an intern civil engineer, and then he progressed from an intern to junior engineer to engineer, and then he was a senior engineer, and then became a technical leader, and then a divisional manager, and then he became a technical director. So now this takes us to our step 3, right, which is the identifying of skills. So now, so far, we know we want to be, or you want to be in consulting, and in consulting, you want to be a technical director, just like Mr. X, because Mr. X is such a wonderful person, right? So you say, okay, but Mr. X, how did you get to the point where you became a technical director? And then Mr. X says, well, at this position that I'm at, it's more about leadership, right? And that's the key skill that that you need at this level where I am a technical director, right? And before I was a technical director, as a divisional manager, I needed to have a skill on how to manage other technical leaders, and also that leadership element. And then fast forward, I see I'm sort of out of time, but I'm going to move a little bit quicker now. So now, okay, then to be technical leader, then you needed to have some qualification. So in the case of Mr. X, he got his MBA when he was a technical leader, and then he was managing managers and other engineers and so forth. So he was building his leadership skills as a technical leader. And then when he was a senior engineer, the key thing was getting his PRCPM, and then being more involved in managing large groups and managing multiple projects. And then as a civil engineer, he was working a lot on advancing his skills in modeling, design, and also making sure that he gets his PR-Eng. And then as a junior, he was working on he was pursuing his technical masters, and then worked on gaining more experience. And then the basic foundation at junior level, just know how to use AutoCAD, because now once he understood how to use AutoCAD, then he was able to use Civil 3D, he was able to use the structural softwares and all the other softwares that civil engineers are using at the time. And then as an intern, all he needed was a qualification, the right mindset, and a career plan. So you as a student, you are sort of starting at ground zero, and what you need is get your civil engineering degree, but you need to get that degree, your marks in the sort of right brackets. All right, so let's look at your gap analysis. So now we're going to step 4, conducting a gap analysis. So you are where you are right now, which is a student. I'm not sure whether the students here are 4th or 3rd years or what, but whatever the case may be, you are a student, and the big gap what you want is to become Mr. X. So that's where you want to be. And the gap now is that you are a student, you don't have a qualification. All right, so that's your first gap, right? So once once you get your qualification, then you want to secure a graduate role or an internship or a junior engineer role. And in that junior engineer role, a lot of, because I've worked when in the same consulting engineering company that I worked, there was a civil engineering division, and a lot of the junior guys, junior civil engineers, the first couple of months, the emphasis is know how to use the different softwares, especially AutoCAD and Civil 3D, right? So it's something that you can, as a student right now, start learning that, and that will set you apart from the competition when you start going through interviews, when you're trying to secure that graduate role, right? And so forth. So let's leave it there as students, and then obviously I've cut this presentation because I understand that you're sort of at that high level. Now, next thing is you need to plot like your what you call your action plan, right? Now, in plotting your, I see this says plot. I'm supposed to say plot an action plan. So now from the previous slide, in step 4, we've identified the gap, and we said, well, we don't have a qualification. So the first and the first thing that we learned from Mr. X is that when he did his civil engineering, I think his average was above 70%, and then that allowed him to secure a good internship or graduate program. So let's keep it at maybe 65% plus average, but I would strongly advise that you target like plus 75% if you can, average for your qualification. And the reason why I say that is the biggest thing that they're going to use to evaluate you, whether whether a big company takes you on as a graduate or not, is your marks. Like, unfortunately, that's how it works. And if you come in with an average of 50%, 52%, you're competing with people with 70+%, you're not gonna get the first preference, all right? Then the next thing that follows after the marks is your mindset. You know, are you a teachable person, right? So are you teachable? Do you have the right attitude? And that's the next sort of thing that comes after that. So as a student right now, if you are busy failing, like you keep failing, you keep writing subs and whatever, you need to get your act together and start focusing on getting that you know, those 65% plus marks, because you are going to struggle if you don't you don't get those marks when you're trying to secure your next step, which is a graduate program. Then another thing that you should sort of be doing now as a student, over and above trying to pass and getting that high average, is start now learning AutoCAD, Civil 3D, because the great thing is you get all of those on the student license, and that again is something that's going to set you apart. So when you go to the interview, you can even write. One of the things that I also recommend is you can literally start documenting your journey, your journey of learning AutoCAD. Start sharing the models that you're doing on social media, so preferably LinkedIn, because that's where the employers are at. You know, start sharing the models that you're doing. Start doing mock projects. Start getting involved with the what you call Saice, when they are doing community uplifting projects. Get involved. In your community, they've got a problem, a water problem. Solve that problem. And they've got a sewage problem. Solve that problem. Come with a solution as a civil engineer, and that will set you apart when you are busy doing your your graduate interviews, because you've got something to say in your CV. All right. So now you've got all that sorted out. You've got a plan. So number one, you know which path you're gonna sort of take. You've got a role model that you're saying, yeah, that's the person that I wanna I want to be that person. That's the one, right? And then secondly, so thirdly, you now you go interview the person, or you check out their LinkedIn, or you find their CV somewhere, and then you look at what sort of skills they were sort of gaining as they progressed, and you start looking at yourself, and then from yourself, and then you have your gap analysis, then have your plan, and then you start executing your plan. Now, when it comes to execution, there's a couple of points that I have for you, right? So number one, there's no one is coming to save you. So basically with no one is coming to save you, or no one is going to save you. So basically that means that your career development and your success is your responsibility, right? So even the career plan, no one owes you the information to tell you what the different career plans are. So you being part of today's event is actually a huge privilege. So this is a privilege. So it's not a right. Saice doesn't have to do what they're doing. The what you call the organizers, they don't have to do what they're doing. It's a huge privilege. So and you need to like sort of appreciate that, and know that is the fact that once you get into industry, it's not going to be easy. Right now you're still having it easy. When you get to industry, there's not going to be this sort of support. You are on your own, and you need to take ownership of your own development. Everything that I've shared with you, you need to be doing it, and you need to be putting the work every single day. So no one is going to wake you up and tell you that tomorrow, next week, you're writing a test, so you must prepare today, right? So you need to save yourself. When you get to the industry, right now as a student, everything is served to you on a silver platter, and that's a fact. And if you don't believe me, you will see when you graduate that actually student life was easy. Everything was served on a silver platter. It's very simple. This is the module. Structures is delivered over 6 months. These are the 3-semester test or 2-semester test. You must get above 50%. You must write the exam. So all you need to do is just show up and study, and then you pass, and then it's done. Well, in work life, it's not like that, right? So in as much as it looks very easy, the way I've defined how to do like a whole career planning and what have you, it will look good on paper from what I've explained, but you will see that when you start start executing, it's going to be difficult. So for instance, now you've identified your role model, and you try to find out, hey, so how did you get to where you got to? And then they just tell you to F off. You're wasting my time. Who are you? Right? Then that's where the first hint of reality is gonna hit you. All right. So yeah, so no one owes you anything. It's not gonna be easy. You're not gonna get it in a silver platter. And if the important thing about this framework is that it helps you visualize. And my whole thing is, once you're able to see like your career plan, then you are able to, once you visualize it, you're able to actually believe it and actually follow through with your execution. And the last point is start where you are, right? So it's all good to say, okay, there's Mr. X, technical director in a big civil engineering company. I want to be that guy, all right? So it's not going to be a matter of you now you're a student, then tomorrow you wake up, then you are there. So this whole TikTok culture where, in 30 seconds, a person shows you where he started and where he is in 30 seconds, and you think that's how fast it is. So I like the what you call this, one of the slides the previous presenter shared, which is showing you the years it sort of takes for you to go from where you are to be a partner in a consulting as a management consultant. It will take that long. So the biggest problem with people in their career paths is that you start a path, and then within a month or 2 months you're already tired, not knowing and understanding that no, the path that you've chosen will take you 12 years to get there. Mr. X became a technical director when he was in his 18th year of working as an engineer, right? It will take time. So if you don't have that long-term vision, then setting your career plan is just pointless. With that, thank you for the time, and yeah, thank you for allowing me to exceed my 15 minutes. And yeah, so yeah, if I will take, or as they said, we'll take questions at the end. And yeah, just remember to connect with me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and yeah, we can always talk about this in more detail. So start where you are, and all the best with your career plan.
Thanks, Nkululeko. I think that was great. It was brutally honest, and it's essentially what our students really needed to hear. Up next, we do have Gracia. Gracia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Can
You
you hear
can
me?
go ahead and start sharing your presentation.
Okay. Okay. Let me try to see. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes,
No?
we can. It's
It's
flashing a bit.
acting a bit. Yeah, it's actually acting a bit weird. I don't know if how I can share my presentation. I share it in the group. Is it possible for you to share it for me or something?
So I'm just trying to share it for you now.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Saice Ymp, and I graduated as a civil technician, and here's my path from where I started. And I'll try my best to give you as much information as I can. But I would like, first of all, to thank all of you guys thanks for the invite, and thanks for the students who are listening. And yeah, hopefully I can give you something meaningful. So, okay, so to start with me, first of all, in terms of career, I finished varsity in 2014, and I had a really like a 2 years gap, and that 2 years gap was not intentional. It was literally job hunting. And within that 2 years, it was a sad thing, but at the same time also a blessing. I would say, because I opened myself to try to connect with what, for example, if civil engineering was actually my path, because I knew I was interested by a lot of things and I was willing to try as many things as I could. And now I had the time, and I could read as many books as I could talk to anyone. And this actually pushed me to actually get out of my shell as a student and an introvert, I would say that. So I realized, like, just sending an email, looking for a job online and sending an email would be enough for me to secure a job, because I've tried it and it could not work. I tried to network and get out of my comfort zone, try to go on networking sessions, go to events and everything that I called, but unfortunately, none of those things could actually work. They could get me somewhere, but not to something I would say that will secure a job. So within that period, one thing that came out of it was the idea of being of value. So this became really important for me. Like, if I meet someone or if I work with someone, to remove myself to the idea like I'm just gonna be the student or an intern. So I start thinking already like, okay, if I need to join a company, should I be acting as a partner? Should I be consider myself as a business consultant? So if, for example, I have to meet a director, let's say a technical director and so on, I'm not going to have a conversation in terms of what, if they can give me an internship, but it should be more about what exactly they're struggling with their business. So this is something like Hand Up, which happened within those 2 years. And I learned as much as I could in terms of technology, in terms of management, entrepreneurship and everything. So my idea was like, if I come, whenever I get my job, I just don't want to be the person who will follow up, like listen. I want to bring something on the table. So this goes on, and funny enough, I feel like data was the first thing that actually helped me get my first job. And the way I'm saying that is because I read somewhere that numbers don't lie. So you can literally talk about, okay, I've applied to this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. But if you record yourself, so what I did was like every single time that I apply for a job or I just send an invite, I connect with someone, I recorded that information. And like I created a system for me to see like because I was living at the time in Pretoria, within Pretoria, I had to have all the companies within Pretoria and I've called as many people as I called and see what was the response and so on. So with having that system in place, I could tell, for example, like within a particular week, I've called, let's say, 30 companies and I've received these answers. There are some of them who told me straight, like they can't employ me. Some they say like I should try them within 3 months and so on. So this system, I end up building that database of companies. I finished Pretoria, I could not find anything. I went to Joburg, and Joburg, I could not find anything. I went for Polokwane, Free State, and so it went on all the way like that. And in the end, I ended up having at least around 2,000 companies. And within those 2,000 companies, I had like 5 interviews. And within 5 interviews, I got like one person who kind of like was interested into employing me, but eventually they could not. But at the same time, I did the work. So I kept on continuing doing just recording the E4 that I was doing. And eventually in networking, I ended up meeting someone who was interested by the way I organize my information. So the way I organize my information and the discussion that I had with that person, it was not on the student level, but it was like as a business partner. And eventually I end up securing my first job. I work as a contractor and eventually I work as a structural modeler. And all those paths, it was always about what I can bring on the table. Like I know like there'll be people within the company that are comfortable with doing some of the things and there'll be things which I will struggle. So I'll be like, okay, what is one thing I can come up with is just for me, something which I can bring of value within the company. And this end up adding, for example, I was not comfortable with doing only CAD work. For those who have done AutoCAD, I joined the company. One of the company I joined, all the work was done in AutoCAD. I was like, okay, I want to do it in Revit. Revit is a 3D model software, and it's actually way more flexible, and then it actually helps reducing the number of hours. So I started working on that because I communicated with my director at the time. And eventually, when time was, my time with that company ended, I went to another company where I was offered a role as a conceptual drafter. So technically, I went from working in 3D to working in 2D. And the company was mostly not related to anything structural. It was a civil engineering company which was working mostly on transportation planning and transportation and planning. So I could not be like, okay, we're going to use Revit. So I was like, okay, what else can I bring? And within the time, I ended up moving to, okay, what about GIS? So technically, instead of me working with drawing, I started realizing like I can work with GIS. So I can produce work based on data. So GIS is geographic information system. So technically just referred to data with shapes, and that those shapes are linked to a coordinate. So the same way like you have countries and so on, you can have, for example, limitation shapes of municipalities, houses, building, and everything. So at the time also, I spoke with my manager and then be like, oh, I want to do this. I feel like I can do it. I can be great at it. And eventually I started doing that, and that became almost 80% of my job. Like I started describing myself mostly as a GIS technician. And after doing that, I realized like, okay, I've done my part. I feel like I need more. And by more, it was like, okay, I'm familiar with data, but how about data into the business world? So once again, I got that chance to speak with my manager and eventually was open to the idea of business. Well, how does data apply within business and so on, which I did. And finally, by 2021, going to 2022, I started my job as a data analyst consultant. So yeah, that was my path. So I would say like in terms of career, like how I went on, my thought as a student when you want to do so, like whenever you have kind of like you're not sure about what to do, I would say like it's important first of all to also be confident about yourself. You know, like the fact that you went from wherever you came from to the level to the point where you are, that doesn't mean like there is something within you. But the most important thing is actually trying to clarify, get more details in terms of what you are really good at. Because what you are really good at is something that you'll be able to work on. There are things, for example, like for me, when I was learning things, I didn't mind, it didn't feel as hard work. It didn't feel as hard work for me to learn, for example, GIS. I was learning that in December holiday, and it was a blast for me because it was just interesting. And of course, I understand there are things which you're not gonna feel the same appeal for it. So always try to question yourself, what's going on and what can I offer? Is there something which is really important to me? Is there something which feels like I want to learn about? So yeah, so this is just one thing I wanted to share with you. And yeah, so now I work as a data analyst. So I would like to kind of like describe a bit what's going on. So data in short is just information. And almost every company, like literally almost every company, starting from Amazon, Google, Tesla, I mean, like everywhere there is data, and we are producing more and more data. So we are having things like the 5G. For example, if you think back, like let's say, for example, I don't know, 10 years back when you had a phone, you will spend, let's say, like 100 megabytes. You could buy 100 megabytes to save you the whole month. That will be the bundle that you will use. But right now, in our current situation, 1 gig is what we consume as individual on a daily basis. But when you think about big companies, they even spend more on data. So there is more and more data, but very few people actually to deal with that data. So data in short is technically just information, the flow of information and so on. So that information is everywhere and so on. So this is how, like, I'll just try to kind of like work with me into that example, the example I have here. So this is kind of like an observation. For example, if you see this as information, like they give you a blank page with those 4 objects, they ask you like, how does one report what they see? So literally you can come up with, you will see people who will just gonna be they will just mention like, for example, I just see 4 objects. I can just write one sentence like I wrote 4 objects. But at the same time, you're also gonna find people who can literally write a 30-page report about whatever they are seeing here. So now how does this information actually end up being reported? You know, like how can you make it meaningful data? So the way like data works is like, so literally you can report it as like, I'm just seeing just 4 objects, or you can report it as I'm seeing a circle, a rectangle, a cube, and Sauma and emoji. But the way like data works, in order to actually classify, in order to create meaningful meaning within the data, so you need to structure it. And the way you structure it is to have this table. This is how we call what we call like structured data. So you would have, let's say, a column, which is like an attribute. So for example, this column, this row here will represent an observation. So you will say, for example, my first observation is a circle. The shape is a circle. The color is blue. The dimension, I think, is a 2D based on your observation. Is that a geometric shape? You'll see yes. And then you go to a second and so on. By having the data this way, it actually creates it gives you clarity. And this is how what we call like structured data. But the thing that came with it is that how much detail can we give when we are representing that data? So whenever you're sharing information, you could end up saying like, okay, we describe about the shape, the color, the dimension, the regular polygon and so on. But we can even add more information. For example, we can describe, for example, what is the perimeter of the circle, you know, the area of the circle, what is the angle of that object, is there a symmetric object? And we can even refer to when did we make that observation, to be like, okay, when did you observe exactly like it's a shape? You can put a date. Like if, for example, you are taking a day just to make that observation, you can have that. So that creates so much information. We can say so much more about just those 4 objects. And this is how information actually is processed. So now and this leads us to actually 2 types of data. So we have traditional data and big data. So traditional data is technically the data, like for example, what I share. It's usually in columns, in a table, which has rows and columns, and it's organized data. So that means like we can have an idea about it, we can look at it, we can have at least some understanding of it. On the other side, we have what we call big data. So meaning like that includes pictures, it includes social media interaction, financial data, and everything. So that is disorganized information. It's not something like you can easily look and observe. And as a data analyst, my role is usually between the two. Like I will have to analyze, for example, traditional data to see if something is clear or something, if I can add something, I can create meaning of it. At the same time, I also deal with big data. By that meaning, like I have information which is unstructured and so on, and I have to convert it to traditional data, to something that can be observed and can be presented. Okay, and the data team. So if you came across data, you will usually end up seeing there are a lot of people that will talk about data scientists. You might heard about data analysts, but where do these people usually play? So at the very bottom, you have what we call a data collector. So literally, this is an interest role for almost, which can be found by anyone. Like it doesn't require much like knowledge. So literally what you do is just collecting data, and what you do is just using an Excel or Google Sheet just to collect data in terms of what you're observing. It can be an observation as the one that I shared. But at the same time, on the next level, you have what we call data architects. So once people have they've collected the data, they've put that into an Excel spreadsheet and so on, there's a person who will try to make meaning, will try to connect that information to make sense of it. And after that, you have people who act as a data manager. So those one are the one who have access. So for example, when you're working within a company, you will have access to some data. At the same time, you're not going to have some of the data. And that's the role of a data manager. And the data manager, what they do, usually the tool they use is SQL. And SQL, in short, is exactly, it's the same way, like an easy way to explain it is the same way as using filters within Excel, but for big data or information which can be perhaps 20 million rows of information. It makes it easier to filter it and kind of like extract data. And on the top level, we have what we call data analysts, and what we usually do is finding insight or help with decision making. And among the tools that we use things like Python, R, we still use Excel, we use Tableau to actually share information, but at the same time, we use SQL. So a data analyst can literally do all the jobs of everyone who's underneath them. And at the very top, we have what we call a data scientist. So a data scientist, what he does is like, once a data analyst have found, the data analyst has analyzed something and they've found insight of it. So the data scientist, what will do is create a model. So that model as machine learning or AI and all those buzzwords in terms of tech, the data scientist is usually familiar with them. So what they will do is like create a model. By creating a model, meaning like that analysis they have done, that the analysis like we have done as a data analyst, we can use other data. So an example of that will be like, let's say, for example, we want to predict how many bags of sugar, for example, ShopRite has to import, as they have to bring, let's say, within one area. Let's say, for example, within Joburg, like they're importing from the farms. So they need to have a certain numbers. So if I make the analysis to be like, okay, they will need 15 numbers, and this is my analysis, I can share that. I will share that inside how I end up analyzing everything and then share it to a data scientist. And the data scientist will look at my analysis and create a model. So a model actually works as a function or something where you can put data within it. So the data scientist will create a model, and now he can bring that model to, let's say, Checkers or Pick and Pay or Woolies. So they'll be like, okay, we have done the analysis. So now what you can do is just put your data within this model. Is going to give you something, an answer, and so on. So literally, that's what a data scientist do. What they do. And okay, so in terms of data analysis process, so what I do, like in terms of work, so usually what we do is just 6 things like we do on a regular basis. The first one is asking. As much as we are someone who comes with a background in civil engineering, my ideal is usually just to do the work. We're excited when you can just have the problem and so on. But this end up being a big problem. I face it, and because you just be like, I just wanna jump myself within a problem, but at the same time, you're gonna find yourself doing the wrong thing, because one thing you need to do is to ask the right questions, and there is not quite a defined way to, because asking questions is literally like an art to know, like, okay, what is the right question to ask? Because the people that you're gonna work with, they are not familiar with the data, they don't know what to do, they probably are not as educated as you can be, but they want answer, they want something, they want a result. That's what they will have. But on your side, what you will do is to ask as much effective questions as you can. And after you've answered those questions, you need to prepare the data. So that means like you need to look for like where the information is sitting, who has the information, who has the data set. For example, what data would help you respond to the question, what could help you with the question. And after you find the data, you can purchase the data. There are companies actually there selling data. Once you have that data, then you have to process it. By processing, meaning like not every data set that you receive or anything that you have at hand will be something meaningful. So you need to create meaning within that by trying to make it clean. By making clean, meaning like the data can be processed within the software that you're using. And after that data is clean and so on, you can analyze information. You can analyze. By analyzing and so on, usually what happened within the analysis is usually like statistics. So you can do anything that like you have been taught, I guess, in mathematics in terms of statistics. It's actually a great base to understand, for example, defiance, the mean, and all the standard deviations and everything and so on. So those are things that you can do. Then there is predictive analysis and so on, and all those things. Of course, you can always learn them, like to see what you can do, and then that's where your brain. I feel like that's a time when your brain kind of like know what to do, because the thing is like you have spent so much time working on problems, you have worked on problems, so your brain is actually aligned in order to solve problems. So I personally believe like you don't need to kind of like to restrict, like you need to trust yourself to understand like I've solved problem before and I still can solve problems even if I don't have everything. It's just the way that you proceed into solving the problem by knowing what you already have at hand within the moment that you are. And so you will do the analysis, and of course you would the way like you
Sorry,
structure, the way you
Gracia.
organize.
I think we're
Yes.
just running out of time. Can I ask you to just conclude?
Yes, I'm actually done. So yeah, and the next time is just how you share the information and how you're gonna share and acting on that information. So the other thing I would like to say is like the most important part is literally how to ask questions. So how to ask smart questions. So by smart meaning like how they can be specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and time-bound. And in terms of learning, so you can learn like data analysis. Usually, if you want to do it at university, you can do a degree in statistics or computational math. If you can't do it, you can do it in Coursera. Google has a bunch of launch courses for data analytics professional. So you can do it, which is like $37 per month, and it's actually a great training. If you can't do it, you can go on Udemy. There are a channel called 365 Career, and it's just selling course for like 200 Rand, and you can have a great learning experience. Otherwise, you can go on YouTube and just follow all the author that I've mentioned. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gracia. I think it's important to remember here as well that Gracia does have a civil engineering degree. So data analysis and stuff is all open to you guys to become in the future. I must apologize, we are running a bit behind on time. Up next, we do have Caitlin. Caitlin, if you are there, please go ahead and start sharing your screen.
Thanks very much, Jimin. Just checking if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share the file now. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I am Caitlin Johnson. I am a lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in the discipline of civil engineering, and I'm also a PhD candidate in the Center for Water Resources Research at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So just a little bit about me and how I got to this point. After graduating, I worked in consulting for 4 years. I did 2 years in the industry in the office, and I did 2 years on site. Did some work experience in hydrology and hydraulics, and on site I worked on a bulk water supply project looking at building reservoirs, pipelines, and pump stations. At the same time, while I was getting my experience in industry, I was also working on my master's part-time. And I always knew that consulting and site work was never going to be a long-term career choice for me. Though I was grateful for the experience, I knew that I wasn't going to be doing it for the rest of my life. It was not my passion. Also, doing my master's part-time, I realized how much I missed academia, and I decided to take the plunge and leave consulting and site work. I left my job, got a bursary, and decided to pursue my PhD and further my studies. And with that, I got into teaching and then became a university lecturer, and I'm still working on my PhD. So today I'm just going to give you guys a background on academia as a civil engineer, and we'll define academia. We'll look at the different branches within academia, and then we'll see how the branches come together as a career in civil engineering. So when we hear the word academia, we often think of that university building. And by definition, academia is an environment or community that is concerned with pursuing research, education, and scholarship or community engagement. Where will you find us academics? Most often you will find academics working in higher education institutions, so universities, for example, or private research institutions, for example, the CSIR. Some examples of typical job titles, you would find tutors, lecturers or professors, course coordinators. If you're looking at higher management of universities, you would find deans or academic leaders. And you also have people who focus mostly on just research. So as I mentioned, academia has these 3 main branches. So in academia, one can focus their career either mostly on research or mostly on education, but there'll always be a combination of both. And these two will then link up to community engagement in some aspects. When we're talking about research, as a student, many of you will have experienced research in your undergraduate careers, whether that be through small research projects, any group work or lab work you've done, if you've done any final year dissertations. If you are postgraduate, you would have been exposed to master's work or PhD work. And once you're done with your PhD, research continues in postdoctoral work. So we all know research involves identifying a problem that we are trying to solve. We then look at reviewing the literature to understand what the current state of the problem we're trying to solve is. And then we come up with our research questions, we develop aims and objectives, and we then choose our study design, collect our data, process and analyze the data, and we write a report based on our findings to communicate how we've come up with the problem solution. So civil engineering, as you know, has so many subdisciplines, and it's so great because there are so many scopes of work for different research. So at UKZN, we have many research groups, and these are just a few, which focus on concrete materials, environmental, coastal and hydrological research, environmental engineering, fluid mechanics and coastal engineering, satellite applications and hydrology, structural engineering, transportation, and urban infrastructure. So within various research groups at various institutions, there are many different research topics that one could focus on that you could branch into as a career choice. Other institutions, other universities also have various research groups that they have focus areas on. So how do civil engineers conduct research? You know, when you think of research or lab work, you picture somebody in a white lab coat with their goggles on, with a pipette and some beakers mixing up some chemicals. But as civil engineers, it's different for us. Although we do have some lab work and field work, as you can see, here's somebody in a fluid mechanics lab doing some modeling. We have some lab work and field work, but a lot of the work can be done through modeling and computer programming and statistical analysis. And this is often done through desktop studies, which use software like Excel, R, Python, MATLAB, GIS, Procon, and finite element analysis programming. And we also do our research via case studies and expand that to larger scale applications. So there are various methods of actually conducting research as a civil engineer. It's not just the typical thing that you would expect when you think of the word research and you picture a lab. So I mentioned community engagement earlier, but how does that actually tie in with the research aspect? Well, we're researching to solve problems, to find solutions to these problems. But what's the point if we don't share this information? So part of research is actually sharing the newly found information with the scientific community. And this is often done through presentations at local and international conferences, and also through publications. So as researchers, we would often write reports or journal articles for publication, and this is made public for use by practitioners, other researchers, other academic institutions. And these research outputs often contribute to the development or improvement of guidelines, which are used for engineering design. And they're also used to inform decision-making of stakeholders and practitioners. So quite often, some of the outputs from academic research will be used by municipalities. For example, a lot of the work that we've done at UKZN is being used by eThekwini municipality. The Department of Transport also utilizes academic research. SANRAL, the Water Research Commission, Department of Water and Sanitation, and so on. These are all stakeholders that rely on academic research to improve their guidelines and decision making, as well as practitioners who utilize the information in order to design. And when we talk about education, I think as students, it would be something everybody's been exposed to. It's the most common understanding of academia. When we talk about education, we're looking at lecturing. And as a lecturer, the main duties or responsibilities would be obviously delivering lectures, seminars, and tutorials to students, but also to design and prepare and develop courses, modules, and teaching materials. In addition to that, lecturers have to develop and implement new methods of teaching to reflect changes in research. So as we research and we find new solutions to problems, as lecturers, we have to incorporate this into our teaching in order to equip the current students to be able to deal with future situations as practitioners after they graduate. Lecturers also have to assess students' coursework, as you all know, as well as set, mark, and moderate examinations and assessments. And apart from dealing with the teaching aspect, lecturers also have to supervise students' research activities. And this includes final year undergraduate projects. And if we're looking at postgraduate work, it includes master's and PhD dissertations. At a higher level, lecturers have to supervise their own research and their own research groups. And this typically includes research assistants, whether that be in the form of postdoctoral researchers, PhD students, or master's students. So these are just some of the roles and responsibilities of lecturers, and looking at the education aspect of a career in academia. So how does this all come together? So I'm going to use myself as a little case study. Here I am working on my PhD. Most of my work is in engineering hydrology, and my study area is in estimating water resources and stormwater management. And the focus also is studying processes of precipitation, runoff, and their interaction, as well as studying floods and strategies to overcome flooding. And as we know, in recent times, improving strategies to manage floods is of critical importance. So the work I do is mostly desktop work. I don't tend to do anything in a lab or in the field. Most of the work I do is using software, and it's analyzing past data in order to make estimates for future design. So just a little bit about my research. Ooh, the slide is cut off with this picture of the drainage manual a little bit. But my research is focusing on updating stormwater management and design flood estimation for the application to civil engineering design. So this means that I'm looking at estimating the input values that are needed for design engineers to use when they do their design work. So as an example, part of my PhD work is estimating extreme design rainfalls that practitioners will use to estimate design floods, which they then use to design hydraulic structures. And this contributes to the development of flood prevention and lessening the effects of floods on hydraulic structures. So you would find the types of outputs of my research in a document like the drainage manual, and that can be used to design hydraulic structures such as dams, spillways, stormwater management systems, and so on. And apart from research contributing to the development of guidelines or manuals, the research has also been published, and here's just a little excerpt of my Google Scholar, where some papers that I've published have been published for international consumption, which is also part of community engagement. And this is just part of the PhD work. So research will then continue after PhD work into postdoctoral research, and it can continue in the same field and expand on the work that's already been done. And when we talk about education, in terms of my experience, the work that I lecture is very much tied to the research experience, as well as the science experience and consulting experience that I have. So it all kind of amalgamates together in the lecturing aspect. So the modules that I teach are introductory fluid mechanics, applied hydrology, supervising design projects dealing with stormwater management and flood hydrology and so on, as well as research, dissertation supervision in water engineering and hydrology topics. And in addition to that, as a lecturer, I also have postgraduate supervision responsibilities, and that is dealing with honors and master's students. And all of this is within the field of my research, and the outputs of the research are linked to the community engagement aspect. So in summary, as I finish up, I can say academics are people who work within their chosen field, their specific discipline, either as a teacher or a researcher at a university or a higher education institution. You can focus your career more on research or more on teaching, or you can have a balance of both. And within that, you have also the link to community engagement. Academics are typically people who study and analyze their area of specialization before sharing their findings through teaching, publishing, and participating in public engagement. Academic work will involve pursuing knowledge and the dissemination of this knowledge and the application of this knowledge through activities, including but not limited to research, scholarly activity, teaching, public lectures, conference communications, publications, and professional practice. Typically, an academic career starts with postgraduate studies and basic tutoring. And once you complete your PhD and you work your way through the academic ranks as a lecturer, a senior lecturer, an associate professor, a professor, and so on. So if you have a keen academic ability, if you're interested in pursuing original research, if you enjoy and have an aptitude for teaching, if you have good oral and written communication skills, if you're confident in presenting information to an audience and fielding questions, if you are able to work as part of a team as well as individually, if you have strong leadership and supervisory skills, if you're organized and you pay attention to detail, and if you're able to analyze and solve problems, then an academic career may be for you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Caitlin. I think you really highlighted how important academics are. Just from my perspective, as a roads engineer, I basically use the Sanral drainage manual every day. And even further, I use Prof. Smithers' journal articles as well daily. So thanks for that, Caitlin. Up next, we have Paco, who is a member of the Saice Water Division Committee, and he will be talking to us about what it's like to be a water engineer. Paco, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Jim.
Thanks. You can go ahead and share your screen now.
Right. Thank you very much. Just a second. So, as Jim said, I'm Paco from the Saice Water Division and the Student Outreach. And today I will be presenting about water engineering. What is water engineering? Give you a bit of the highlight of what exactly water engineer do. And the qualification as a bachelor degree of technology in civil engineering. And I've been inspired to do water engineering or to specialize in water engineering at the beginning of my career, where I have a chance to work on a water treatment plant, the construction of a water treatment plant, which has really inspired me in pursuing my career in water engineering. And what is water engineering? Water engineering is a division of civil engineering. It's a division of civil engineering, and which include the treatment of water and wastewater, the water resource management, and so on and so on. The other some of the challenges that as a water engineer we face right now, especially as with the change in climate. We have some, yes, I was saying the challenge that we face as water engineers are climate change, which have a very big impact on the way things like rain and so on, the weather pattern are changing in our everyday life. And the other challenge that we have as in our sector as water engineers is the aging infrastructure. By the aging infrastructure, we meant by the aging of infrastructure. We have, let's say, pipeline. We see like most of the time, like right now, we have water cuts here and there due to shortage of water. Some other places, companies like rainwater cannot supply water as sufficient as possible for the population, and most of the time it's due to the aging of infrastructure, where lack of maintenance also, where we have the loss of water here and there, and there is basically not enough water for all the population. And the other challenge that we have is the population growth. By population growth, as a city grow or a area grow, we have people that are moving in, and most of the time the infrastructure are not upgraded, in a sense that when people move in, we have a higher demand of water, we have higher demand of sanitation, and we are fast to build houses, we are fast to make up development, but most of the time we forgot about the basic needs as human, which is to take care of our water needs. And what is the importance of a water engineering? What is the importance of water engineering? The first point that we took was saying that water is a very fine resource, in a sense that it's a resource that is very limited. In a sense that it's a resource that is very limited, and as water engineers, we 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 work on the basis of trying to save that resource, and trying to share it, if I can put it like that, to all the citizens as possible. Some other thing that we do as water engineers, knowing that water and sanitation access is a basic right for every citizen. So we ensure that population and areas have sufficient water to live, in a sense that it avoids immigration of people from town to town, or where people congest in one place by lack of, let's say, by lack of water and so on. The other thing as we do as water engineers is to make places safe from flooding and drought. By making a place safe from flooding, what we do as water engineers, we design infrastructures. We design infrastructure that's gather for all the flooding that may happen, or the extra rain that may happen. Where we have my colleague before talked about some runoff, and most of the time flooding is produced by when there's excess rain in an area, and there's no way to drain that water out. So when there's no way to drain that water out, and it's basically fill up the area, and it creates flooding. And as water engineers, we do design things like drainage system, in a sense that we project, or we design according to we design according to some design requirement of that area, in the sense that when such event will happen, like rain and this and those kind of stuff, there is enough drainage system to take up that water. And as water engineers, also we do care for drafting. I mean, for drought, in a sense that we put out the information to the population, in the sense of saving water. Water is a very limited resource, especially in countries like South Africa, where it's a water scarce country. So we do some sensibilization with the population to show them the way of using the water, things like when you're brushing your teeth, you need to close your tap. Things like when you're gardening your place, you need to, when you're watering your garden, you need to do it, let's say, early in the morning, in a sense that there's not enough in a sense that you are limiting the evaporation. Another thing that we do as water engineers, on this slide, I took the time to show you some of the infrastructure as we design as water engineers. Some of the design that we do, we do the water supply system, we do the pump station, we do the pipeline and the reservoir. We design water treatment plant. We design backwater collection, the hydropower generation. We also do, we design them, and stormwater and so on. On this other one, I'll try to to show what is a life of a water engineer in a project. When a project is implemented, let's say we are building a water treatment plant, we as the beginning of the project, there will be a multidisciplinary team where we get out the process engineers, environmental engineers, the architect, the mechanical engineers to discuss what the project will look like. And then after that, we go to the meeting. Where do we do in the meeting? In the meeting, most of the time we discuss what is the what is the requirement of the project, what is everyone responsibility into the project. As the water engineers, our responsibilities most of the time it's let's say we have as I said at the beginning, we are designing the water treatment plant. So as a water engineers will be doing the calculation for the, let's say the tanks that will be used for that water treatment plant. These pipelines and so on. So you will basically do the calculation for those pipelines and so on. And next thing we do is at the concept design. At the concept design, what we do, the concept design to construction, we do the feasibility study. We do study if that project is really going to, if it's possible to realize that project in that area. We check at the budget. What budget do we have to realize that project? We check at the things that what is the timeline to give that project. We take on the things like the beneficiary of those of that project, the growth of the population in the area, and so on. Once you do that, and the next thing that the next step where we go is with the digital engineering. What we do in the digital engineering? In the digital engineering, it's where we do the analysis, we do the modeling basically of the plant. It's where we put together the plant and we try to work it out in using software like AutoCAD, Bentley, and Dynamo. Those are some of few software that help us with the design and the modeling of water structures. And then after that, once we have basically your model, you have your drawings, you have everything that you need to start a project. And once the project has started already, once the project has started, and let's say we are already on site, start with the building, with the construction, and then you as a water engineers, you will be supervising the project. You will be overseeing the project. And then by overseeing the project, as I say at the beginning, we have a multidisciplinary team where we have also stakeholders involved, and those people need to understand exactly what is going on with the project. And by stakeholders, I meant people that are financing the project. So most of the time, those people are not technical or engineers, and that way we as water engineers or as engineers, we need to. Some of the point that we do is you need to develop your communication skills. By communication skills, I mean can start using language that are not much technical while talking to stakeholders, when doing your presentation, when meeting some other people from other engineering discipline. Let's say, for example, you meet a mechanical engineer who does not understand exactly the water engineering language. You can meet a structural engineer where you need also to make him understand exactly what you are designing. Talking about the skills, as I mentioned in the previous slides, some of the skills that you need to do as water engineers, we have the communication skills. You need to be able to pass the message. You need to be able to pass the message to the client, to the other engineers. You need to make them updates, know where you are and how far are you with your design, your part of the design that has been assigned to you. Some other skills that you need to develop also is you need to be good with what you're doing. In some of the with the previous presenter, they mentioned the point of being focused, in the sense that you need to study well, understand what you are studying. You are not just studying to pass, you are studying for the future. So the knowledge that you are getting at school will basically go with you even on the field. It's true that you may forget some other stuff, but you need at least to have to grab that knowledge. And the other thing is time management. That's a key thing as engineers. We need to develop your time management, because things will start happen very fast, and most of the time is become very limited. Your project management experience. You need to develop your project management experience, your management skill, to familiarize yourself with IT. By IT, we meant the software that that we use as engineers, software like AutoCAD, Bentley, and the others, Dynamo, just to make yourself the first choice of most of the employers. You need to have a problem-solving skills as an engineer. That's basically, as engineers, we are built to solve problems. We are born to solve problems. By born to solve problems, you need to be a problem solver and thinker. We have also, you need to be self-motivated. You need to collaborate with the others, and those are some of the skills that you need to develop as engineers. And we like also to focus on, especially on the event that we have in Natal, as flooding and everything. As I defined before, the flooding is just the effect that there's much rain. That is, there's much rain, and there's very little infrastructure way of draining that water.
Sorry,
So by
Pablo, I
that,
think I'm going to have to stop you there. I think your time slot is a bit up. Before we have to move on to our last speaker, can you just wrap up?
Yes, no problem, no problem. I'll do that very quick. As I was talking about the flooding and some of the cause of the flooding, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is the lack of infrastructure, the lack of maintenance of our infrastructure and so on. And also, as we may notice in most of our urban places, there's no place where the water can, we have pavement almost everywhere, and we need to develop ways of draining those water. And yeah, just trying to go a bit much quicker. I will try to also speak about our division as water engineers division in Saice. Our aim or vision, we are there to promote the sense of water engineering. What we do is to make people aware of what we are doing as water engineers. And we have some couple of portfolio that we do have in our division, which help us with to keep in touch with some other field or area of engineering. We have the membership, marketing and communication is one of the portfolio. We have the continuous education and training. We have external stakeholder. We have event and award. We have the student outreach from where I'm from myself. And then as a student, for the student outreach, we aim to gather younger students as ourselves here, and also as myself as a young person at the start of the career. What else we do is we do make event, the industry talk, the webinars, and site visit for the student. We also have some couple of competition and award that we do offer. We have the equilibrium competition. We have some bursary that we do give to students, and we also have some award and bursary that we give to students. And I think that's already from me. And if someone needs to ask me what I really do like about being a water engineering technologist, what I do like is really being part of the solution. As I mentioned, we are the water engineer. We create solution and give access water to to the population. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paco. That's very informative for the water division. Up next, we do have Prof. Richard Walls, if he is still there with us. Apologies for the delay thus far.
Okay, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Great. I'm busy just loading up the file. Hopefully it's working. Great. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, you can. Thanks.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Professor Richard Walls from Stellenbosch University. I'll try and get through this fairly quickly. I'm going to be trying to talk to you tonight about fire safety engineering, and most of you don't even know what that is. Probably it's not well known in this country. Our students are quite good at fire engineering. We've burned down many a building throughout our campuses across the country in various different ways. So what do now engineers do to protect against such destructive fires? And there are various things. Well, what is fire engineering? Firstly, it's the application of scientific and engineering principles, codes, and expert judgment based on understanding the phenomena and effects of fire and of the reaction behavior of people to fire to protect people, property, and the environment from the destructive effects of fire. So most fire engineers come from either a mechanical or civil background, but they do also come from electrical, process engineering, or chemical engineering, and various other ones as the field is growing. But the thing is that our population is growing, and there's a lot of major infrastructure projects, raw material extraction. So we have a huge demand for fire engineers in our country and across the continent. We have seen basically as soon as graduates are competent in this area, they get snapped up immediately. My last graduate, as soon as he sent out his CV, got 3 job offers immediately, just because there's such a shortage in this area and so few people working in it. And the problem is the number of fire incidents per year is going up in South Africa, Ghana, and other African countries. So our engineers design systems to keep our buildings, etc., safe. I mean, you look, Parliament building burnt down, Charlotte Macleay Hospital had severe fires. And coming from an engineering background, you need to understand human behavior and evacuation, fire protection systems, fire protection analysis, fire science. And as I said, you come in from either civil or mechanical background normally. So in South Africa, almost every construction project requires a fire safety engineer. There's no tertiary education providing fire engineering PRN training in Africa. Stellenbosch were the sort of only one with a formal fire engineering program at the moment. And EXA will soon be implementing a professional registration category. It's just come into effect, and they're starting to certify people. But every single large construction project now has this strange person called a fire engineer working on it. And so, for instance, what would you do? You could design petrochemical facilities, design the pumps, tanks, and various things. So in case of a fire, you can design for that and work out what are your separation distances, what flows, what pumps, what bunds do you need to keep it safe. You may need, this is work we've been doing on, you have different construction systems, and what are they safe from? So, I mean, this is almost a chemical engineering process, but I mean, this is, we're doing as civil engineers, we're testing it. And I've got a PhD student working on, we're doing civil engineering, structural engineering topics on that, testing products, and are these safe for NGOs and other companies? Designing detection, suppression, and other systems. Electrical engineers get involved, but civil engineers are also specifying those as well. So you can see we inherently overlap, but it's no one's field in particular. So can you design the extraction system to suck the smoke out so people can escape? Then civil engineers keep buildings from falling over. Structural fire engineering is a main component, and making sure in case of a fire, a building stands up. Every single structure requires a fire rating. So we need to make sure our structures are safe. The steel, concrete, timber, etc., meet certain requirements. So what would you do in steps in fire safety design? First, you'd understand fire behavior. So for instance, the system seems to not be playing there's a video embedded and it doesn't want to play at the moment. But this is a video showing fire spread. So this was a large-scale experiment conducted, and then we would look at fire spread from one dwelling to the next, and then from that we can understand the temperature, heat fluxes, and the likes, and then design for that to have a system that is well, we can at least say what will work and what won't. Now, you can have a look at large-scale fires. We were involved in the Nice Fire project, where 1,000 homes were destroyed, and there were large fires that spread across many kilometers. I mean, there were actually 3 specific start points and of the fire, and it spread all the way through Nice and through Plettenberg Bay, destroying hundreds of homes. And fires can do crazy things. I mean, here we have a spot fire 2.6 kilometers ahead of the fire front. It actually jumped a mountain and a forest propelled by high winds. Here's other large-scale fire testing on informal settlement dwellings, where 20 dwellings were burnt down. Now, most of the time, when you engineer something, you don't engineer for informal settlement homes. The principles are the same. How would a fire behave? How can I design the suppression, detection, water, walling systems, structural systems to keep it safe from these destructive effects? So, for instance, here the fire is being lit. The first 4 dwellings are on fire. The second 4 dwellings catch fire after 2 minutes 20. After about 3.5 minutes, 12 dwellings on fire. After 4.5 minutes, 16 dwellings. After 5 minutes, we have 20 homes, full-scale homes on fire. And you'd use the physics to then design systems and then say, well, what would be suitable in terms of a building, petrochemical facility, etc. So, and then the fire, and then eventually 1 home standing after 16 minutes. So what would be the things you may need to do? As I said, designing systems. You'd provide solutions in various ways: firewalls, smoke detectors, aspiration systems, etc. How do we keep buildings standing? So this is some of the work from a structural fire engineering perspective. Modeling of buildings to say what fire rating can we get on an unusual steel structure, and can it have a 30, 60, 90-minute fire rating? Analyzing heat transfer using finite element analyses to see, would it satisfy certain fire ratings. Continuing on, this was a large-scale test to quantify the fire resistance inside, and this unusual system was able to attain a 60-minute fire rating. So just in now wrapping off, as I said, there's job opportunities in general building projects, petrochemical projects, processing and manufacturing, transportation, so airports, trains. I've got an old PhD student working for a train manufacturing company. Insurance companies, they're hiring quite a few as they underwrite massive fire safety losses. So they hire engineers with fire training, municipal fire safety, academia, fire testing, research and development. So it's not a big industry, but because of the shortage of skills, the engineers are getting snapped up left, right, and center. We've been contacted by the UK and Australia looking for skills, because even the UK and Australia are short of fire engineers. So this is a shortage of skills and a job opportunity we're going to see for decades to come. So Saice events, we've got the Saice Fire Division. We've got various webinars coming up, and we've got some international guests who are going to be invited to speak. You'll see announcements coming soon. We've got a team of civil, mechanical, and electrical engineers on the committee. It's probably one of the only committees that has a multidisciplinary team, and then it falls between all of us. So all of us are involved in the work in moving the industry forward. So conclusion, any pyromaniacs in the future? I mean, in the audience, any of you interested, you are more than welcome to ask me questions. And yeah, that will just give a very brief overview of our profession. I'm a structural engineer by background, but got involved in fire safety through research and now running courses, etc., because of the shortage and need in the field that we're working in. So that takes us to the end. There's my contact details. And I think we're going to swap over to a time of questions at the moment. So back to Jim.
Thanks, Professor. If anyone has any questions, feel free to send them through into the chat box, and we can ask the respective person.
I'm not sure if it's a question, but I see a comment that I'm not sure if civil engineers with this involved? Well, overseas, it's actually interesting. It varies from country to country. For instance, in the USA, it's very mechanical driven. But in the UK, a number of the fire teams are based at civil engineering departments. So there are a lot more civil engineers. There was a team I visited in the UK, one of the top fire engineering team, kind of half were civil and half were mechanical. There were also some electrical and others. So yes, often while doing wet services, the structural design, various other things, civil engineers are starting to get more and more in the fire engineering design on projects. So just here, any advice in terms of getting into the field? It's a difficult one to get into because it's just so small. Firstly, I mean, you can approach fire engineering companies directly and then just request that, you know, look for jobs at fire engineering companies. That's often the simplest thing to do. In terms of formal training, the Institute of Fire Engineers does have some training. It ranges in level. It doesn't go up to sort of BEng, MEng level. We're, to be honest, we are the only university on the continent actually offering formal sort of accredited degree programs. China University of Technology does have a fire technology program. I'm not sure if it's accredited. A lot of the guys go into the fire services, but I mean, they also do go into fire engineering as well, working for petrochem, industrial, other facilities, you know, companies. Thanks for the comment on steel videos. Yes, we've put all our undergraduate YouTube lectures online, so you're welcome to go learn about steel structures. That's our undergrad degree. Well, quite a lot of between our two YouTube channels. So hope you enjoy.
I think that's...
Yep, I was going to say you're welcome to ask questions to the other speakers as well.
Yeah, let's just give it a minute and see if any more questions pop up. Okay, I think it's fair that we can just wrap up. So yeah, we just want to say a big thank you to those all involved, all the Saice young members for assisting in the planning, to our speakers, especially for taking time out of their busy schedules. We really appreciate it. Also, a massive thank you to the UJ Civils student chapter for assisting with setting up Blackboard, and all of our Saice head office staff, Memory, Frida, Debbie as well. Thanks for assistance. I think we can say good night, everyone, and take care and be safe. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Jermaine.